Yes, how you doing? Dr. Chris Lemmon here, and this is a blog for July. So a little introductory talk to go along with the blog. The blogs, I get a lot of hits on my blog sites and people come back and they have questions. And I originally were going to do this after the blog site was out. And then I found that the questions I get are like 2 months or 3 months later. It seems like they chew on them for a while. So I kind of read the blog over and say, hey, what didn't I make clear? And that's kind of a habit I have of doing things anyhow. Uh, Not so much because I was interested in getting it perfect or even getting it right, but it only to serve me. I look at something, I look at an idea, I write it down, I look at it and go, wow, what was I thinking about when I wrote that? Holy cow, that's kind of really interesting. That for a long time, I used to only keep 1 year's supply of blogs up there on the website, just because 2 or 3 years back, I'd look at that and say, what was going on? Um, Most certainly out of context, because probably at the time I was teaching certain workshops, certain concepts. I was working with ideas, I was working with theories, I was working with something out of books, or I had a group of people that inherently came from the same church group, the same whatever, right? Uh, uh, I, I can remember in Sacramento one time I had a group of ladies that came in for a class that I was teaching on, and these all these ladies were in there, and it's kind of like the energy felt really different to me. It was like I'm not sure why, and I got talking to them, and by the end of the first night, I got it. There was 14 gay women that all came to take class. It's like, wow, they didn't come in saying, oh, we referenced something, something, something. But as it turned out, that a friend of theirs, another gay lady that had taken classes from me, spoke highly of the classes and recommended it. They didn't do anything. And then she actually got in an accident and died. So I guess because the fact that she had died, they were all sitting there missing her. So they decided, let's go take a class from Chris, because she used to like his classes. So I lost one student and I gained a bunch. So it was really fun. I had to, by the end of the first night, I had to realize it's like, wow, I really need to reframe this so that I have clarity in my communication, right? I don't have a problem with anything. It's just that I don't want to sound like an idiot because they don't make any sense, right? I don't have the same references in life that they have. It doesn't make theirs right or wrong. It's just not the same. So why should I tell it from my viewpoint? I really have to have a more diverse viewpoint. This is the matrix of range. And that was me securing into having a range that I could be in to talk to that group of ladies. We all do this. You go to mom's house, you talk in that context. I go visit my stepfather who's 97 years old, and I have to frame it. I have to talk about something that happened in 1950, or I have to talk about World War II. I have to talk about my mother who passed. I have to talk about, it's different framing, right? So those are different ranges. We have a lot of diversity. It's amazing how many ranges we have. It's really good news. I would imagine if we had more consciousness, not that I'd want more, barely handle what I got, but if we had that, we could see all of it as one range. But because it's not, because we don't have but two eyes, if we had 45 eyes around our head, we could probably see something. How do those creatures that have those weird eyes where they can see every angle? I wonder how their brain really works. It's just like sort through all that stuff. There's a lot of different views. Must be some way to prioritize it, right? Does that make some sense? Okay. So what we're doing is we're going to secure into range because the background's changing. All right. So the first thing we do to secure into something is we take a look at it and we said, oh, how are we doing? How are we humans doing on a planet? So that's the first thing that I put into the blogs is we're really not doing so bad. When you take a look at things. It's like, yeah, we look in the newspaper and it's kind of a mess, right? It's horrible, right? But we understand that's the problem in our particular state of change, like climate change. The weather's a little warmer now than what it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? Uh, Come on, during the ice age, we had permafrost all the way down through the state of Pennsylvania. That's the polar cap went all the way down to Pennsylvania, and now the polar cap in the North Pole melts in the summertime. Not too many years ago, you used to be able to go up on a ship to the polar cap and get off and go have a barbecue on the ice at the North Pole. And then it all melted in the summer. So that's now they just get up on a boat and they anchor and they sit right at the North Pole and they have a champagne something or another. At least that's what the ads say. I haven't been on one of those trips. They're a little too pricey to see snow and water. I could see cheaper somewhere else. Trip to Alaska would be sufficient for me. But anyway, so this is what we'll do. We'll start to kind of say, okay, let's look at what our accomplishments are, not our individual accomplishments, our humankind accomplishments, right? Not small groups. Are there people being persecuted? Are there problems in the world? Yes, of course, but less problems. We've actually resolved some of them. Once again, the logical system, once we resolve the problems, it divides it into more pieces. So before we just had issues with groups, and now we have issues with subgroups and subgroups within subgroups. And yeah, it's just intriguing. So let's put our focus on our accomplishments. Let's start to take a look. I've recommended a book. I recommended some data, some websites on there. You can take a look. We're doing pretty good. It started wiping out things. I think we're going to have a little downturn with the changes going on. So we wiped out some poverty some places. We're going to have an increase in poverty probably on the planet for a little bit of time. Maybe not level one poverty. Maybe some of the work that we've been able to do is going to be able to remove some of that level one poverty on the planet. That would be great. That means it's not a horrible, that's just a horrible life. To eat one food for all your meals, for all your life, to never have a pair of shoes, to never be able to walk very far, and to always have an hour or so walk to get to water that you can bring back and actually use for cooking. So you have to carry it and only have one bucket. So you have to make a trip for every meal, plus for bathing and washing and all barefoot. And you have to move. Those villages have to move because they're digging latrines, and you can't stay there with a latrine and have a system that allows that. You're just going to have to move and dig a hole somewhere else. So it's a constant. Level one poverty is really tough, right? So I'm just advocating the fact that we're wiping out a lot of that on the planet. We're doing some good stuff. Oh yeah. In the process, yeah, there's people that come into power. There's people that take advantage of everything. That's just the nature of humankind. That's just all that is another form of bias is I have money and you don't, so I get it my way and you don't. It's just a bias, right? So we work with that, what we have. We look at what our major accomplishments are. We start to realize that by getting together and forming some unions, we have actually had some positive effects. Yes. Some of the people that are great philanthropists, I've given huge amounts of money or are making a lot of money, right? Okay, that's all right. But at least something gets done, which is better than nothing. So we're making some progress. We have to start with a positive piece. If I'm going to make an influence, I have to be able to offer something worthwhile rather than saying, I don't know what to do. Right? So I have to come forth with an offer. And you have to come forth with an offer for your loved ones, for your family, for your neighbors, right? That's just what the nature of it is. went over my neighbor, and his bush was kind of all over the place. And I saw he was kind of ducking around it, trying to get out of his car. And I said, hey, I got some tools over there. You want me to come over? I can trim that, or I can loan you the tools. And I see that he's trimmed it. So now maybe, I hope he hasn't taken it as an insult. But if he has, he has. What can I say? But I was willing to help him. Doesn't make any difference to me, but most certainly made it cumbersome for him. And he just had surgery. So, whatever, just neighborly, right? So do you get this? It's kind of like, we don't always accomplish the goodness because we get distracted. And sometimes our goodness is imposition of doing it my way instead of their way. I'm guilty of that too, right? So that's okay. All right. So it's not a perfect game ever, but we're accomplishing some things. I'm hoping you're accomplishing some things in your life. You got some downtime. So I've just been reading a lot more books. I'm really looking forward to, like, hey, when this cycle starts to change, when things come back into another balance again, some type of different direction, what are the potentials we can do? Wow, interesting, things changing. And what's that direction going to look like, right? What's financing going to look like? Who knows? We have no idea. The really good news is we get to influence it, and we haven't done a bad job of influencing. Not 100%, but still not bad. We have made an improvement in the numbers. That's really good news. Now, if we're going to work on a range and you start to open up range, I don't want you to think it's empty range. It's kind of like if you buy 100 acres in Arizona, don't assume it's just going to be empty property. I remember a story about, I won't give the names because I don't have their permission, but I remember a lady that was a writer, and she had decided to get out of the city and go out in the country. So she bought a house out in the country, and she didn't quite know what she was doing. So she moved in the house, and she set up her business in a house in the country rather than the city. So she didn't have to deal with traffic and everything. It was probably a smart move. And it was all computer. So I was like, okay, no problem. And she was living in a house for a couple of months. And finally somebody came over and said, hey, your cow's over in my field. Well, she'd been living there a couple of months, and she didn't know she had a barn or cows. Wasn't in the fine print. That's okay. I've got another very wonderful gentleman that bought a piece of land in Southern California, and he'd been there 6 months. And then all of a sudden he found out that behind the fence, his property had a fence, and behind the fence, there was another 2 acres. And he, in fact, owned that 2 acres too. He had no idea. So the weeds had got pretty high, and there were trees out there. And I guess the fire department notified him and said, hey, you got to clean your property up because it could catch fire. So, I mean, he immediately cleaned it up, but he was delighted that he had more land. It's just kind of funny. He had more range than what he thought, but it wasn't empty. Easy to look out and say, wow, I found an empty space. I can own that. I can fill that, right? My wife and I seem to do that, right? It's like, I need 2 more garages. But the other end of that is that most of the time when you expand range, you find this like stuff in it. So when you expand that range out, you might find all kinds of sounds and ideas and voices, and all kinds of things start to muster up as you expand that, as you start to make that changes, right? It's really interesting to see. I can remember being on a trip one time, and I was staying in his room, and the closet door kept coming open. Click, 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 come open. So I went over and I looked at that, and I thought, wow, that's, the hinge is out of balance, blah, blah, blah. So the next morning, I was there for 2 days. I was at a meeting. So when that conference was over that afternoon, I went and got some tools out of my car, and I went and rehung that door, moved out a little bit, put screws in, changed it, right? And then the door didn't open anymore. So the next night I sat there, the door stayed closed. And when I was leaving, the girl at the desk said, Did you like the ghosts? That room's haunted. The door opens and things in the closet move, and I didn't have the heart to tell her that I fixed it. It I guess I expanded my range into someone else's range, someone else's story. I'm not saying it wasn't haunted. I'm just saying that it was haunted. At least I made the door quieter and less easy for a poltergeist to open, or whatever you believe in. I'm not saying I believe or don't believe. I'm just saying I was seeing it as part of a logical range of things. I can fix a door. Yeah, the bottom hinge comes out, it now swings, right? If it was opening this way, then you bring the bottom hinge out. Now it wants to stay closed. Simple enough to do, right? Not a problem. You get this? So as you expand range out, you might find things, ideas might come to you. You wonder where this comes from, all right? Relatives leave me stuff and I'm sitting around and all of a sudden all ideas come up. And then I find out later that that was their passion in life, and they left some artifacts and I inherited, and now all of a sudden it's building a little fire in me. And it's like, wow, as that range opens up, the ideas came along with it and I discovered them in there. And at that point, it was easy for me to make a decision. I don't even know if I want to keep these tools, right? These were old ideas that, come on, you got a plow that you'd pull behind a horse. If someone gave that to me, I might put it in my front yard as an artifact, but I'm not going to go buy 40 acres and a horse and plow fields. I don't think that's, but I could get that inspiration from holding the plow and feeling it. It's like, I could imagine that. You get this? That's the ability. Range opens up the ability to imagine things in a bigger scope, and you may find lots of things in there. And I had lots of people that used to come tell me stories, and it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Really, they just expanded range. It's not an empty space. It's all in a balance. And when you take ownership of more range, you find more potential. And those potential come up to ideas you can imagine and you can play with. And that's cool. That's what we're doing this for. So as you start to open it up, it's like, wow, that's pretty interesting, right? Just like, I stayed in a haunted room one night. I had a guy that had a problem, and he had an old house, and people would tour it. So he was in charge of the building, maintenance, and so on and so forth. A big mansion, right? One of the things with the mansion is the lady that lived there, the last owner of it, she was crippled. So the maids, the caretakers, would come in, get her out of bed in the morning and put her in a wheelchair and wheel her over the window. She liked to look out at the garden. And she owned this big house and she was wealthy. And sometimes the story was that the maids would get busy, the caretakers, whatever you want to call them, would get busy and they wouldn't get to her at the right time, or maybe they'd check on her and she was still asleep, so they came back in 20 minutes. They'd get back and they'd find she had somehow or another managed to get to a chair by the window. So the bedding was all thrown back and she'd managed to get over there. And of course, they had no idea how she managed because she couldn't physically stand up. She had to be physically lifted and put into a wheelchair or slid over or whatever they did, right? Anyway, that was the story. Well, this guy was running the place and he had a security guy that would come in the morning and he would open a door and walk through the place to make sure nothing was wrong. And then the rest of the crew would come in and they would open for business and they charge people a tour. Well, the security guy would come in, he would get to the bedroom, and a lot of times the blankets would be thrown back. So he'd have to take a minute and straighten the blankets out. So to make them nice on this one bed in this one room. And he was complaining to the owner. He said, I'm a security guy. I'm just looking for bad guys hiding in a building or somebody stealing something or broken window or something to call in, right? Before the rest of the crew come in so nobody gets hurt, broken glass or something like that. So he said, I'm not there to make beds. So why the people at nighttime don't make the bed? Why are they doing that? Can you tell them to make the bed? I don't want to have to stop and make the bed. Uh, he was afraid this guy might actually quit. So he hired me and a friend of mine to take a look at it. So when I looked at it, I didn't know the story. I'd never been to the building. Matter of fact, I never went to the building. But the two of us sat in a coffee shop and we looked at it. Not in my range. You get it? Not in his range. So we opened the range up and we looked at it, and I saw this picture of this lady kind of like floating across the floor, kind of sitting in a chair by the window. And I thought, well, that's a weird thing to do. So we just sat there and I said, wow, it's in the range. Not my range, but it's in the range. I could kind of see the building. I could see, it looked like a million other old buildings I've been to. I could have walked into it and probably found I was totally wrong, but at least I had this imagined idea. Do you get this? Imagined idea. So I said, hey, let's just talk to that lady and tell her, hey, cut that out. If you're sitting there, you got a bell, you got something there, ring the bell. Don't get out of bed and float across the floor because you're freaking everybody out and you could hurt yourself. Don't do that, right? Not wise and not respectful to the people that are working for you. So I took a real liberal approach, right? What happened was kind of amazing. That whole week, the security guy called in and said, the blankets have not been down all week. Thank whatever you did talking to the night crew. Thank you very much. I love it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, it was a plus for us. But then the downside of it was all tours got canceled. All the bus tours got canceled, all of them, all for different reasons. So the guy called us back and said, you guys fixed it, but all the tours got canceled. There's like nobody coming in here all of a sudden. Can you fix it back? So we had to go back to the coffee shop and expand that range out and have a talk with whatever that silly piece is sitting in that range that we didn't normally inhabit. It was easier the second time going back, and it said, "Hun, sorry we criticized you. It looks like this is your place, not ours. This is your range, not ours. So thank you for letting us visit, but I think you need to get it back the way you wanted it. It's yours." So we pulled our energy out, and the guy called back and sent a check and said, "Thank you very much. Everything's wonderful." And I've hired another person to come in with a security guy. His job is to make sure that the bed's made and any other little quirky thing is taken care of. We're good. Isn't that weird? I don't know what the truth is on that, but it was fun. It was a range I have never been in because I haven't been to the place, but we could tune into it, could smell it, feel it, get a sense of it. Oh, yes, it's familiar because I've been to old places. Doesn't mean I was right. It's not about truth, but it's about influence. Got into weird stuff. This is fun stuff, but it's weird stuff. Hey, I'm not saying it always works. I've had other stuff that, didn't work out really good, but that one worked out really good. Maybe it was my friend that was doing it all. I'm not sure, but it was kind of cool. So that's the nature of what we're doing. We're starting to secure into range so we can expand out a bit. As we expand it out, we're going to find lots of relationships, things already relating in that spaces. As we move out, we'll make new friends. We'll make new influences. Some of it works out really good. We meet new people. We like them. We get along with them. Other people we meet, we think, I'm just going to leave them. It's a cranky old person. I'm just going to leave them over there. They got a right to their stuff. No problem. I'm not going to bug them. Right? That's respect. That's it. This is fun. So, this is what July is all about. And we're looking forward to see maybe what's going to come up with in August. So thank you guys very much. If you have any questions on any of this craziness, go ahead and send your questions to Chris, and that's CHRISS @ Wizards Catch. So Wizards is plural, WIZARDSCACHE.com. Go ahead and send any questions. I'll do that on a little Q&A chat piece on YouTube, most certainly. And the blogs are at wizardscatch.com, and the YouTube channel is Wizards Catch Space Channel. And so there's lots of Q&As and stuff up there. So if you want to, it's all free, most certainly. We do accept donations at the wizardscatch.com site, PayPal on the side, but it's not necessary really. I just really want a better relationship and a better world to live in for all of us. So thank you very much. And we'll see where we're going to wind up. Let's see where we're going to wind up come the end of this year. Okay. Thank you.